Well, hey, Angel fans, and welcome back to Halo Territory. I am Mike DiGiovanna, former LA Times baseball writer and host of the show, joined as usual by my co host, Mark Trumbo, the former Angel slugger. And our special guest today is Keith Law. Keith is a senior writer for The Athletic, former special assistant to the Toronto Blue Jays general manager. Keith writes extensively about prospects and the draft for The Athletic. Keith, really glad to have you on here. Welcome to the show. How you doing today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Good,
How about
good.
you guys?
Doing great, doing great. We thought before we dive into the Angels farm system that I was hoping, Keith, you could sort of give us a little peek behind the curtain on how you do your job. Like, how vast is the network of scouts and player development people that you tap for your prospect list, your mock drafts? How much video are you watching throughout the week? And how much evaluation do you do with your own eyes?
Yeah, that's the most important part. I mean, I wish I could do more,
Yeah.
honestly, but I go out. I'll be out not this weekend, next weekend. College season starts this Friday. We got a family birthday, so I'll be home for that. Following weekend, I'll go out and be out almost every weekend until we get to May. I'll do spring training in Arizona for sure. Probably Florida. I hate Florida. Mark, I'm sure you can attest that it is no comparison between the two. Um, and then during the season, as much minor league stuff as I can reasonably get to. I live in Wilmington, Delaware. I've got 8 teams within 2 hours of me. I'm always watching to see who's coming through. In addition, obviously, just evaluating the local guys and do the futures game, do the fall league, and
Yeah.
then all year I'm just talking to guys naturally. Like I do know a lot of scouts and executives. There are some I just talk to more because they like to talk. They're guys who just, you sort of get a feel for who's willing to talk and just say, here are the guys I saw, here's what I think, and who is the type who just wants to get on the phone and just talk baseball for an hour or so. Because
Yeah.
I also like doing that. I can talk on the phone for hours, particularly if we're talking baseball.
Yeah.
And so I kind of do that throughout the year. For this process, the last 6 weeks or so have just been heavy video work, some light data work, nothing compared to what teams are doing. And then last 3.5 weeks, it's just been writing constantly where
Yeah.
I have Synergy as a video and data app that I have access to and got all my notes and 80 tabs open in Chrome. Then I'm wondering why my computer's not running so fast and just plow through them. It was 3 teams a day every
Yeah.
day until it was done. I think I finished the last one on Saturday night. Everyone was asleep here, and I was like, "Oh my god, I can finish! I could just finally be done." Finished off the Blue Jays, so I could enjoy Bad Bunny in peace on
There
Sunday.
you go. All right, well, let's dig into this Angels farm system. As Halo fans know, they've had 10 straight losing seasons, and in six of those seasons, they've lost 88 games or more. So they've picked in the top half of the draft. I believe it's 9 times in 12 years. They've been in the top 10 in four of those years, yet their farm system has been ranked in the bottom five for like the last five straight years. How is that possible when this team is picking so high in the draft every year?
Well, it's a combination of not a lot of success in the draft, and also their last three first rounders are all in the big leagues. And whatever you think of them, they don't qualify as prospects anymore. For I think most of us, those of us who do it full time, we just use the rookie of the year eligibility. And so Zach Neto was out almost immediately. Nolan Shanuel and Christian Moore, I think each of them would have been eligible one time, and that was it. And then they were in the big leagues. So most other systems that you look at, they'll have a couple of first rounders sort of littered through their usually high in the top 10, but at least on the top 20. And the Angels have lost out on that. But then also, I'm sure we'll talk more about this, they've had some drafts that just really haven't worked out. And I think so much of their draft philosophy has been about getting guys who can either get to the big leagues quickly or potentially be tradable for them for major league help, that it has resulted in worse outcomes for them in the draft, whether getting guys who aren't high ceiling enough or who aren't developing enough or who get into the system and they stall, which I think is probably more applicable to some of their international free agents, but it's been true on the draft side too, where they've taken guys I have liked who've gotten in and just haven't improved anywhere near up to expectations.
That makes a lot of sense. That is kind of what we have talked about as well. You commented that 22-year-old Denzer Guzman really didn't belong in the big leagues last year. He didn't have any success, and it didn't look like he was ready, quite frankly. Nelson Rada's 20, and Joshua Lugo's 19. They're right behind him. Also, candidates for maybe premature promotions. How widespread is this through the Angels system, especially the international players?
Yeah, I hear this a lot from friends of mine, scout friends of mine who cover the Angels, where it's there. It's like a disclaimer constantly, where it's like, "What do you think of Nelson Rada?" And one guy said, "Well, he's got to be their best prospect." Now he hadn't seen Bremner yet at that point, right? Bremner didn't pitch, but of the guys who were already in the system, he said Rada's clearly the best guy, but he didn't belong in Double A. He didn't belong in Triple A. It's just this constant caveat that they're offering. Which we like these players, we think they have ability, but they shouldn't have been at the levels they were at. And I do think it ends up hurting a lot of these players' development. Where Guzman, I mean, that poor guy looked like he was in survival mode. I'm impressed that he was able to have the season he had when that same scout I'm talking about, he said he saw Guzman in Double A, and he's like, I don't even know if they can send this guy out to Double A. He was playing with that squad in spring training and started slow, and then just got played well enough there to earn a promotion to Triple A, and then struggled with contact in Triple A, and then they promote him to the big leagues anyway because according to them they had a need. Jeez, that is not how you develop players based on your need at the time. It's based on what the player actually needs, and so I think because these international free agents, they typically come in at 16 or 17, it's more blatant when they get rushed versus all the college guys they've drafted. They might promote some of them too quickly. I think Moore got promoted to the majors too quickly, but it's not as noticeable because he's 22 and he looks like a man at that point, where some of these guys still look like kids. Josua Lugo still looks super young. So if they rush him up to Double A this year, it's going to be pretty glaring. It's just less so with the college guys.
Let's talk a bit about their top prospect, Tyler Bremner, number two overall pick last year. In your recent report, you described him as a guy who, quote, doesn't have a lot of ceiling beyond a number three starter. I know Bremner was a way under slot pick, but don't you need to get a little more than a number three starter with a number two overall pick in the draft?
I think so, and I hope I'm wrong, but I saw him. I actually got his worst start of the year, second weekend out, where he gave up 7 runs to Seattle University. Not exactly a SEC powerhouse there. Um, he throws hard, and he does have a really good changeup. This could be a Michael Wacha level changeup. It could be a kind of a Michael Wacha level package. If the fastball gets a little bit better in quality, I think he could be that kind of pitcher. Uh, Bremner does not have a great breaking ball. He throws a slider now. He gets a high spin rate on it, but it's not very effective. He doesn't break that sharply. Some of it is how he lands. I just think he has a hard time working to his glove side. Maybe the Angels can help that. They're not an organization that's had a lot of success, I think, in terms of making significant mechanical changes to guys, hitters or pitchers, to get them to improve. That, however, is what I think he would need to do. Get a better breaking pitch any way that he can to be more than a number three starter. As currently constituted, I think it is the Michael Wacha skill set. And Wacha's been a valuable big leaguer for a long time, but
Yeah.
he's never been somebody you want pitching in the first or second spot in your rotation. You like him because he throws strikes. The changeup is a real out pitch, and at least when he was younger, he was able to handle some innings. He's done a little bit of that for the Royals too. So he's a good pitcher. I think you want more than that when you pick second. I think they passed on some higher ceiling guys, maybe a little higher risk or a little further away from being able to help a big league club than Bremner, but would have been better selections, in my opinion, at the second pick.
All right, we're going to take a little break and hear from our sponsors. We'll be right back with Halo Territory.
Hey, sometimes we do a little game on Foul Territory called Role Play. It's not what you think. We're just picking up our phones and we're talking as if we're somebody in baseball. But if you'd like that phone to be a little bit cheaper for making phone calls, who should you call, Kratz?
Mint Mobile, because you get all the same speed with a tiny little price.
Same coverage, tiny price. Ready to stop paying more than you have to? New customers can make the switch today, and for a limited time, get unlimited premium wireless for just $15 per month. Switch now at mintmobile.com/territory. That's mintmobile.com/territory. Upfront payment of $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12 months. Plan required, $15 a month equivalent. Taxes and fees extra. Initial plan term only. Over 50 gigabytes may slow when network is busy. Capable device required. Availability, speed, and coverage varies. See mintmobile.com. Save money. Get after it, FT fam.
All right, welcome back to Halo Territory. I believe Mark Trumbo has the next question.
You described high school left-handed pitcher Johnny Slowinski as the best pick of the draft class for the Angels. What did you like about Johnny? What made him stand out amongst these other guys? And there are some strong picks that they took this year.
It's a real upside play, and the kind of thing I think they need to be doing more of, because they need stars. This major league roster, like Zach Neto's turned into a pretty good big leaguer. I think Shaniel's going to be maybe a solid average big leaguer, but they need stars. And Slowinski was one of the most interesting high school pitchers in the draft class. He's left-handed. He's super athletic. He was a multi-sport guy who doesn't have as much baseball experience as some of the baseball only guys, which I often think you always want to bet on the athletes because they can make more adjustments. They're more flexible. And also the limited experience system, either maybe more growth just from him focusing on one sport. And he already showed 3 pitches, not necessarily plus right now, but enough makings of 3 pitches that you could project forward as he gets stronger, as he gets into professional development. You could see him having his low 90s fastball gets up to the mid 90s. The slider, it's already pretty good. Maybe that ends up an out pitch for him. Has enough of a change up already to say he can be a 3-pitch guy to stay as a starter. They just haven't shot for the moon very much in the draft. And whether, I don't even care at this point if it's a hitter or a pitcher, you got to go for some upside here. You got to go for somebody who might pitch in the top 2 spots of rotation. You might hit 2, 3, or 4 in a lineup because they haven't chased after those guys enough. So I was legitimately excited when I heard them take Slowinski, and I happen to know the scout who drafted him, the area scout down there too. And it's like, oh my God, you got your guy. You got a chance for, everything works out. This is a guy who's an all-star for you. And that's exciting for scouts. And I think Angels fans should be cautiously excited. He's a high school pitcher. He's got to stay healthy, but this is a pretty good package. And they haven't had a lot of guys like this in their system. I would say on draft day, I like Slowinski more than I liked Caden Dana at the time of his draft. To just pick another high school pitcher was, at least he's worked out in the sense at least he's gotten to the big leagues. His story is not written, but at least he made it there.
Who else do you like out of that 25 draft? I know I'm probably projecting a little just based on body, but that Chase Shores kid seems to be pretty projectable in terms of tools and everything you want in a big league pitcher.
He's huge, right? He is listed at 6'8", 245. Might be a little heavier than that, but that's fine. You saw, if anybody watched the College World Series, right? He closed it out for them, and they could not hit the fastball. I don't think he's a starter. I do like him. Like if the Angels are thinking we need somebody from this draft to get to the big leagues, because it seems to be the rule for them, that's the guy you rush. I don't rush Bremner. I'm saying, no, Bremner, we want to work on finding you an effective third pitch, and so we'll take our time. Whereas Shores, yeah, I would love it if he had a third pitch, but really, what is he? He is a power reliever up to 100 with a plus slider, and just have him come in and just throw hard. Guys are going to miss the fastball. They'll be so geared up for 100. They're going to miss the slider enough and just say, this is probably what you are. Like, he lost his rotation spot at LSU. So saying you're going to make him a starter, not impossible at all, but you are swimming upstream a little bit for an organization that has not had a lot of success on the development side. So to me, Shores is the guy where he could pitch in the big leagues for them this year and be really good in some kind of swing or relief role where he is making a difference. And if that makes them feel like they can take their time with Bremner, with Slowinski, with everybody else in that draft class, great. Because I just feel like they do sort of draft and develop as if they have to say, here's one guy from last year's draft who's already in the big leagues. We have to show that. Okay, fine. Let that be Shores. Take your time with some of these other guys.
Sort of a follow-up to that. The Angels, and we follow the Angels closely. Maybe this happens with every organization, but they seem to have this penchant for taking starters in the draft, college starters, and they always end up in the bullpen. Is there a reason this is happening? Is there something on the player development side that, or something on just the types of kids they're drafting on the mound that this seems to happen over and over again?
I think that, thinking back to that all pitcher draft too, where they were going for a lot of guys with stuff that would play immediately in a bullpen, but not enough of a complete package, lacking a third pitch, lacking command, or even enough control, lacking a delivery that might work for a starter, where it's sort of a lot of these guys are destined for relief. And they tried to even take some relievers in that draft. I feel like Mason Erlo was one where they toyed with making him a starter. And for a minute, it looked like they might have had something, but he couldn't succeed or hold up in that role where, yeah, they weren't taking kind of those long range projectable guys or just the, sort of durable college guys where, one thing I will say for Bremner, that's a starter. He is a starter. I just don't think that there's a ton of ceiling as he is right now, but there's no question that that guy sticks in a rotation with the delivery, with the control, with the track record of holding up under a starter's workload. They haven't taken enough of those types of guys. And also the reliever is the default, right? If you don't develop your starters, if you don't develop pitchers, they just end up in the bullpen or nowhere. So I think that's also what you've seen happen is they haven't had that starter success. So guys just trickle down and end up in the bullpen.
Not so player specific, but more organizationally. What are the strengths and maybe what are the real weaknesses in this Angels organization? I looking at your list, I saw really no power bats listed at all. Maybe one, but catcher that might move off the position. But it seemed like there were not any. A lot of low graded power tools.
And I just feel like on the hitting side, they're just generally not that strong. I don't. They've definitely leaned pitching on the draft in particular. So I think if there's a strength here, it's that there's some pitching depth. It just may not be high ceiling pitching. It may be a lot of relievers or back end starters, but that's not a bad thing to have. And if you look at their list, it is pretty pitching heavy. They don't have a lot of impact power bats. They don't have a lot of impact kind of up the middle defensive players. Most of their catchers have question marks. Either they can't stay there or don't want to stay there, or just, they'll stay there, but then they're not going to hit. That would be Flores. The impact is just lacking all around. So I could see them building sort of the back of the pitching staff from their own system and then having to go out and spend to get the one or the two, or maybe they go spend to try to, they tried this with Robert Stevenson, go spend to get the one high leverage reliever for late in games. Maybe Shores can be that guy in a year or two. Obviously, he has no problem pitching in a high leverage environment. So I have some hope that he can be that for them. But generally, I'd say their strength is pitching depth, but not pitching upside.
You mentioned that all pitcher draft that was 2021. The Angels made a lot of headlines with that draft. But looking at it, can you say for certain now, is that draft a bust, or with Sam Bachman, maybe Chase Silseth, can they salvage anything from that draft?
I think it was a bust. It's those guys, right? Bachman and Silseth at least appeared in the majors. Maybe somebody else gets a cup of coffee. A lot of those guys are out of baseball already, which is really disappointing. It's kind of almost surprising how quickly some of that has turned around. But yeah, I think ultimately it was a bust. It was a bit of a gimmick when they did it, but the way we treat pitching and the way pitchers get hurt at this point, there is value in just quantity. Just go get as many pitchers as you can and sort of let God sort them out. But then you look also at who they were taking too. And almost immediately with Kai Bush. Even with Bachman had a terrible medical in college. He had first round stuff, but he had major health concerns even coming out of the draft. And just from there, it was like, this guy's probably a reliever. This guy's probably a reliever. This guy's probably a reliever. Just right on down the line. It was guys where even if you thought they were going to stay healthy, they didn't have the stuff or the command or other characteristics that would make them likely to stick in a rotation. I remember even when it got to Marceau in the third round, what is the philosophy here? What types of guys are we going for? And it was just sort of, let's get guys who can get there quick. Yeah. And they didn't, right? That's the problem. And then when you take those guys and they don't work out, you have nothing left over afterwards.
It's interesting. They've had the same farm director for, I think, more than 5 years right now. Yeah, can you even say what their philosophy is? Is this is that a Joey Probinski pick? Is that a scouting director pick?
Well, it's all scouting director, right? And I believe they've changed at least once under Perry. It's Tim McElvain now. And I do think they have changed a bit of the draft philosophy. I think even last year, 2 years ago was Christian Moore. It was sort of like, obviously they're taking Christian Moore, who I had real questions about the bat and honestly the makeup, the way his teammates didn't particularly like him. He showed very little effort in the field. That really bothers me. It's like, you are a major draft prospect. We're all watching you. You can play hard for 3 months. I don't know. It makes me sound old, but it definitely bothered me when I saw him like ground ball up the middle. He was at second base and he literally just went like that, just kind of put his glove up and the ball went right past him. I'm like, we can see you, right? We can see you doing that. But last year, I did think their draft, while being pitching heavy, like there were some upside plays. They took Slawinski, they took C.J. Gray, they took Talon Haley, who, if nothing else, could be one of the best stories in the draft. Cancer survivor, had Tommy John. A lot of teams didn't want to touch him. They were like, the medical's too scary, and the Angels did it, and they went a little bit over slot. Did it with Xavier Mitchell. Like there's that they haven't drafted like that ever. Like I cannot think of the last time the Angels had a draft class that looked like this one. And I wish they'd mixed in a few more bats, but I'm okay with it because at least they were going for some upside on the pitching side, which is the dead opposite of that 2021 all pitcher draft class, where it was they were trying to go for floor. They were trying to go for college guys to almost, can we draft next year's pitching staff right now? And it didn't work. If this doesn't work, at least you can look back and say they went for it, though. They actually took some long shots, were going for some upside. And they, I think in several of these cases, they took the right guys. They took some really promising high upside arms.
I think that's very positive, and not playing hard is never cool for the youth watching this show. It's immediately a turnoff to anyone that's had some experience, and especially people that played, because it's not really that hard. And what you're describing, quite frankly, is hard to listen to. Sure. So the farm system year after year is ranked in the bottom, whether it's 27, 28th, maybe lower. Is this a failure more on the scouting side or on the player development side? I think it's probably both, but I don't know how much faith the Angels have. Even from my time there, developing pitching was a difficult thing. I don't remember a lot of success stories. There were some, but you look at a guy like Jared Weaver, he was, you saw him as well as everyone else did, but he was ready. Was a well polished. The first time I saw him, he struck out 10 in a row against Long Beach State in 3 innings. Command of all 3 pitches. And that was maybe it was a style, and this is a little bit of a tangent, but he was a pitcher as opposed to a thrower. It seems like now to fit in, you have to, as noted by a number of the top prospects, are touching triple digits. It seems like a prerequisite to throw in the upper 90s at the expense of command and control. So I guess as far as the player development side, let's hone in on that. Do you think they've done a decent job? Are there some highlighted or players you can highlight that you think they've turned into better players along the way? Or does it seem like the guys they draft and promote are pretty much untouched?
I don't think we've seen a lot of, or at least enough, success stories for them. Like Zach Neto was pretty good when he came out. He's turned out to be even better than expected. So I think at the very least you can point to him and say that's their best sort of at least draft success story, maybe not development side, but certainly there is a draft success story there. I mean, I'm going back a little bit, and obviously they just traded Taylor Ward, but that was another guy where he kind of flopped originally. It was like, well, as a catcher, he can't catch and he can't hit enough. And then, they made him, credit to the player too. I think a lot of credit to the player, but made him into a pretty valuable big leaguer who they were just able to trade essentially 1 year of his service to get Grayson Rodriguez, who was a pretty good pitching prospect before all the injuries started. And if he's healthy, he's even moderately healthy and can throw 120 innings for them, that deal's going to be a huge victory for them. But you just look at the team last year, the players, there weren't a ton of players even on it. I just pulled it up to make sure I'm not missing anyone. The guys they drafted and developed themselves, Jack Kachanovitz and Reed Detmers, they haven't been what was expected of them. They got to the big leagues. That is some success, but they haven't been up to what anybody forecasted for them at the time of the draft. And so much of this roster is guys they got from other organizations. Logan O'Hoppe, who I was very shocked at how bad his year was. I actually expected quite a bit more from him, but he started somewhere else. So I have a hard time, not trying to be overly critical of the organization, just have a hard time finding real success stories I can point to and say, yes, this guy came into the Angels system and they made him better. They've had some good draft picks, But a lot of those guys who did succeed did so because they were kind of the Jared Weaver case. I remember talking to Eddie Bain years ago. He said that he saw Jared Weaver. He's like, that guy was ready. Like, I don't get any
Yeah.
credit for that. He just was. Right? Eddie was. I'm sure you know Eddie. Like he'll take credit when he really, really feels like he's earned it. But a lot of those, he was like, yeah, he told me flat out, he's like, Mike Trout wasn't we didn't have him number one on the board. So obviously we were wrong. He just happened to be number one when we got to pick. And so, but with Weaver, he was just waving it away. Come on, that guy was already a finished product before we even touched him.
Are there any sleepers in this Angels system right now, guys who might not be in your top 10 or even 20, but have the raw tools to someday make a pretty good impact at the big league level?
Yeah, nobody beyond the top 20, and I just say that because it was hard to get to 20 in their organization. They were one of the more difficult ones, certainly. I mentioned in my piece Hayden Alvarez, who I'd ranked 11th. He's an outfielder who got to low A last year. He doesn't have a lot of power yet, but he also hasn't really begun to fill out that much physically. But it's center field. It's above average run. He looks like he's got really good feel to hit, which does stand out, I think, in this system where they've kind of gone for some tools and not necessarily taking guys with present feel to hit, just in terms of like bat to ball ability or pitch recognition or ball strike recognition. Everyone talks about swing decisions. To me, break it down into a lot of those different components. And he's young, he's far away, but he has shown some of that. And the fact that they moved him up to low A, because everyone's got to get promoted quickly here, and he still managed to put the bat on the ball quite a bit. And he still managed to lay off pitches out of the zone, especially well out of the zone. Those are really good signs for a teenage hitter. So he was the one I identified as a potential sleeper to make a big move up next year, even maybe a little more likely than a guy like Slewinski, who I love, but he's a high school pitcher who's probably only going to throw 70 innings this year because we put shackles on all of those guys. And Alvarez will play a full season, start in low A, probably finish in high A if he does well. He could really move up, if not the main top 100, at least move up with their internal rankings.
I'll take the credit or the heat for this one, but we were asked about him in our Q&A. A guy named Sammy Natera Jr., left-handed starting pitcher, currently has command issues and also has huge stuff. It seems like from reading, he only started pitching at 17 years old. I believe he played in the fall league, had very good numbers, strikes out the world, but also has a lot of walks to go along with that. So he's a guy that's going to need a lot of development. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him. If not, I just wanted to make sure we covered him a little bit because his numbers did stand out to me. And very raw, so he will need some seasoning, but I think he's 6'5" or so, big, projectable body, not a lot of wear on the arm, so we're going to keep an eye on him. If you have any comments on him, that would be great. If you're not familiar, I will kind of speak, but if you've seen him, that'd be awesome.
Mm-hmm. I've seen video. I haven't seen him live. For folks who don't know, he was a reliever in AA and AAA last year. It is almost all fastball. He's got a real high slot, where he does get some kind of ride up on fastball. It's up to 98. He sits more like 3 and 4. He only has one other pitch. He has a slider that's, I think, kind of fair. I think he gets some whiffs on the slider because hitters they're anticipating fastball. He throws the fastball more than 3/4 of the time. So they're just trying to sit fastball. And if he spins it, I don't think he doesn't. I know he doesn't. He just like kind of average spin rates on it. The shape is okay, but they're just looking fastball. And so he does get some whiff on that. The thing that also worries me is hitters don't chase stuff out of the zone. As you pointed out, the control's not great and hitters aren't following the stuff out of the zone. So he's not generating a lot of those whiffs. And I wonder in the big leagues because he will pitch in the big leagues. He'll pitch in the big leagues this year for sure. Does he end up walking too many guys because of whatever reason? It's just not a lot of deception, or because he's not using pitches other than the fastball enough. So they feel pretty confident it's a fastball and they can guess where it's going. You got to get guys to chase a little bit more out of the zone to be successful, as more than maybe like the last guy on the staff. But because he's left-handed, he throws hard, and he has at least nominally has a breaking ball, he will pitch in the big leagues at some point this year. And there's hope. Maybe he gets to the big leagues and they work with him and just can tweak the slider even just a little bit. I don't think it's ever going to be a wipeout pitch, but maybe it's even a matter of just throwing it more often just to keep hitters from sitting dead red on the fastball all the time, which I think is what got to him a little bit in AAA last year.
All right, my last question for you, Keith. It's pretty clear right now the Angels are not going to spend a ton in free agency to try to turn this thing around. So you have to point to the farm system as, something they need to improve. Is there anything at this point that will give Angels fans some hope that they will be able to develop a few more young players to mix with Zach Neto and the guys they have, the core they have, that will get them back into contention in the next couple of years?
They're going to need some stars to do that. And that's either going to be spending, or they're going to need a breakout from, a Rada or an Alvarez, or, even a Slawinski. And that's going to take time. I think this year you'll see Breyner pitch in the big leagues, hopefully more towards the end of the year, just because it's the Angels. And I don't think he's super far away. I just think depends on how you want to develop him. Do you want him there fast, or do you want to try to get a little more out of him? I think Shores pitches in the big leagues. I think Ryan Johnson returns to the big leagues. You're going to see some products of the farm system appear in the majors this year. But if you're thinking, what is the timeline to contention? To me, it's 3+ years out. And it may be also about making the right trade, or who they get in this year's draft class. Can they go find, especially Mark was mentioning, right? There's no power bats anywhere in this system. You got to go get a guy with some thump who could be your 2, 3, 4 hitter, or go sign that guy. But they haven't really shown any inclination to do that. So to me, it says you always want to take the best player available. But hey, if the best player available happens to be a power bat somewhere, whom maybe a college guy who gets there in 2 years, that wouldn't be the worst thing in the world to get someone like that you need a new anchor around whom to build your lineup. And they don't have that guy right now.
Speaking of best player available, they picked Christian Moore. I believe it was number 8 last year, and the 9th pick, Connor Griffin, is showing up as the number 1 prospect in all of baseball this winter. Are they going to regret? Are they going to rue the day they made that decision?
Yeah, but they won't be the only ones, right? Yeah. I think there's, I don't think the A's regret taking Nick Kurtz, big leagues rookie of the year, sure. But there's a couple teams I think are second guessing their evaluations. And Griffin was a tough one. He didn't hit super well at showcases. He was a pitcher, shortstop, center fielder. Everyone said he was going to be too big for shortstop. I never saw him in high school, but I saw him last summer a couple times, and I was like, wait, people said this guy couldn't play shortstop? Like, there's no question he's a shortstop. I think the industry as a whole was just light on him. Obviously, he should have gone 1 or 2. So yes, the Angels will regret it, but also they'll have plenty. There'll be like plenty of other people at the meeting. Yes, hi, I'm the Angels, and I didn't pick Connor Griffin. There'll be plenty of other people there.
All right, that's gonna. Go ahead, Mark.
No, just you had said I think Connor Griffin comes from Mississippi.
Yes.
Okay, so he notoriously maybe not a great place for high school players, and
100%. Yeah.
And
Mike Trout record out of there is bad.
New Jersey, Trout, Millville, also maybe not a powerhouse. I know on a previous podcast a week ago you had said you didn't when you saw Trout. I think the field might have been in poor shape. I don't know if there was snow or if it was just
rain. It rained so much that spring. I have water in my bottom. We didn't have a basement, but our ground floor room, water was coming. It was the worst spring. It was so bad, and it was. I remember seeing him. I was like, he's a good runner. I didn't know he was right. He's like a freaking track star out there. I mean, I always joke. It's like I was looking at Mickey Mantle. I had no idea. He was good. The best thing I could tell you about Trout that year is he took BP with wood before every game. He missed a bunch of games that spring because there was so much rain. But I watched him hit with wood. I remember thinking, what's exactly the same swing? That's just what you want to see, right? He takes metal out of his hands, gets the wood bat, looks totally the same. I thought he was a really good player. I had no idea he was a Hall of Famer. Right. Obviously, the industry missed too, so I don't feel too bad about it. But it's weird to see a guy and be like, "No, I missed his speed." That's the easy thing, right? Those are pretty. Yeah. That's pretty easy to pick up. It's like going to see a pitcher who throws 100 and saying, "Well, his fastball's okay." I will forever feel like that about Mike Trout.
I think the memory that stands out. Sorry, Mike. One more with Trout. The first time I saw him, I got sent down from big league camp, was playing, I think, for Salt Lake that year, and we had an inter-squad day, so I wanted to get a look at the first-round pick, Mike Trout. So this is about 2010. And I'm watching the game going on the other field, A ball, low A and high A. He comes up and laces a single up the middle when there used to be a hole there. And, it was I saw a nice compact stroke. He hit the ball hard. What I didn't expect is that he just did not stop running. The center fielder did not bobble it. He did not make an error. It was one of the strangest things. I've seen him do a lot of cool stuff, hit towering home runs, all these catches, but that memory, and he was safe at second. He had hit a double on a routine single, and I just couldn't grasp what I was looking at. It didn't make sense. And I've never been able to. That's always, if people ask what, and that memory for.
Yeah.
So when you had said, you didn't see the speed, that's all I can ever think.
Right.
And that, he's trended towards a guy that's not running as much now, but that it was in his body type. He doesn't have the long legs, and he's got a unique body type, but he could really turn the feet over and get up to speed as quick as anyone I had seen.
Yep. Yeah,
Well,
he did that the
they
future
don't.
game in Anaheim. He did that.
Yeah.
He laid loop, not a particularly hard hit single. I feel like it was maybe out to left center, and he just never stopped running. Ended up on second base in front of the home crowd too, which was pretty awesome.
They did not call him the Millville Meteor for nothing, I can tell you that. All right, that is going to do it for us on Halo Territory today. Keith Law, really thank you for joining us. Really appreciate your input and your expertise. Please like and subscribe, and we will see you next time on Halo Territory.